there, and welcome to APUS History with Lennox. And today we are wrapping up time period 2 when we're going to talk about the colonial culture and society. Now, the big idea we're going to look at today is how the movement of people and ideas across the Atlantic Ocean led to the creation of an American society. So if you're ready, we're just going to dig right in. So first of all, what you need to understand about this time period and this development of an American culture was it started with a competition, if you will, between religion and ration. Now, there was this movement that started over in Europe called the Enlightenment. What it did was it emphasized rational thinking over the traditional approach of revelation through religion. It was essentially mind over faith. And in part due to the transatlantic print culture, those ideas started to rapidly spread into the British colonies. One of the key figures you need to know from the Enlightenment is John Locke. He is going to write the 2 treatises of government, and in that he is going to present this idea of natural rights. Now, natural rights encompasses our right to life, liberty, and property. And what he said was these rights didn't come from government, but were endowed to man by a creator. Other ideas that came from people like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Voltaire, and others, and their ideas, coupled with Locke's presentation of natural rights, are going to become foundational ideas of our government because they're going to introduce things like separation of powers and checks and balances. Another major concept that came from the Enlightenment is this idea of a social contract. And the social contract is based on the idea that the power of government lies in the hands of the people. And what we essentially do is we make a contract for government. We agree to give up some of our power to a government who in turn will protect our natural rights. Embedded in that contract is if our government fails to protect our rights, we have the right to strip that government of power and replace them. So that's the political side of the Enlightenment. But understand, there was a lot of other teaching throughout the Enlightenment that undermined the authority of the Bible. The Enlightenment thinkers believed that everything good, everything noble in society originated within our senses, and that the only authority that you could trust is scientific inquiry. That completely undercut the values of Christianity, which stated that all good things in society, all noble things in society originated from God and were revealed to us through Him. So this conflict is starting to build throughout the colonies because of the influence of the Enlightenment. A lot of confidence in the authority of the church was starting to dwindle. This is going to lead to another major movement in colonial society called the Great Awakening. And the Great Awakening is going to be a religious revival that stretches throughout all 13 colonies. And it's going to be spurred by a group of pastors called New Light Clergy. And what they're going to emphasize is the role of our heart in religion versus our head. The effect of the Great Awakening is that you're going to see intense Christian devotion as well as enthusiasm start to grow. Some folks you need to know from the Great Awakening, well, the first one is Jonathan Edwards. Jonathan Edwards is going to combine the Enlightenment with an intense religious fervor. He is going to talk about how our heart, how our feelings are so important in our relationship with God. And he's probably most well known for his sermon, Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God, but that was just one of many sermons he gave. A lot of them address the joy you experience when you do have God in your life and God in your heart. And we can credit Jonathan Edwards with essentially lighting the fire of the First Great Awakening. Now, like I said, he was primarily up in New England. There was an English pastor by the name of George Whitefield. He is going to travel over to the colonies following the Methodist revival in England. George Whitefield is going to travel throughout all 13 colonies, spreading the news about God's salvation through acceptance of his son, Jesus Christ. And he is going to build a huge following. What's really interesting about these new light clergy is they're going to be spreading democratic ideals as they share their faith. And they're especially going to look at the democratic ideals that are presented in the New Testament. And the result of this was common people started to learn that their lack of wealth did not equate to God's devotion to them, meaning that God was still truly devoted to them, and that the Bible really didn't support the tyranny that had been practiced by the elite and wealthy colonial governments. So what we see is the Great Awakening led to a changing in colonial attitudes about government, and we started to see more democratic processes being introduced. So to wrap it all up with a nice little bow, you had these two movements conflicting on one hand, but also working towards the same goal on the other. The Enlightenment taught us about our natural rights, life, liberty, and property, and the role government has to play to protect those. It also presented new democratic principles. At the same time, the Great Awakening is occurring, and the Great Awakening was very successful in bringing together colonial society throughout all the different regions, kind of banding them together as one colonial unit, while teaching democratic values and the threat to those values from the existing government. Bring those two together, and what you're going to see is the basis for resistance against a government that doesn't meet the needs of the people. Now, that's all going to come up in our next unit. But what we're seeing during this time period is the beginnings of an American culture, both a political culture and a society as a whole. So that's it. That's your introduction to the colonial culture and society that developed in the early 18th century. If you have any questions, just pop them in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next one.